what this country needs in the future from this community. And that's one of the things that I think is my role as a board member, to prepare these kids, to help the teachers prepare these kids to be productive.
I believe that the job of school board is really to be the voice of the parents and the children and the teachers, and to make sure that we are able to come to a balance that will work for everyone. It's got to be, it's not always going to be exactly what you want or exactly what you want, but hopefully it can be a balance of what's really right and what's really fair for everyone. Who are the constituents? It's the teachers, it's the students, and it's the citizens of Hooksett. And I think it's very clear that when you're sitting on that board and you speak, you're speaking on behalf of all three of those groups.
Thank you.
Clearly, the role of a school board member is to represent the kids, the associated, their parents, their guardians, making sure that things that are needed are achieved, supporting the administration and the principals. We have great staff, great teachers who are still there, who taught me. I think is to be open to questions, be responsive to questions, and make decisions that, after listening to all the reasons and the requests, to make sound decisions that affect every single one of those constituents that have been mentioned already. So the kids are certainly job number one.
Thank you.
Well, of course, my constituents would be all of the taxpayers, all the residents of Hooksett, all the teachers, and the faculty of the school. I think the role of the school board is to create policy based on the input of the constituents. It's also to create a budget. It's not to execute either one. That's why we have administration and faculty. The school board should not reach down and be making individual, unique decisions within the school. And unfortunately, our school board right now is doing that. They did it last night. They voted on a hardship case when none of them are qualified educators. People are going in, explaining their situation, and these normal citizens are deciding the educational fate of the student without any qualification. That's why our school ballot board is out of balance right now. That should be directed to our superintendent, who holds a PhD in education. He should rely on his staff of specialists for whatever the hardship may be, and they should determine that. Thank you.
Thank you. 1 minute question, starting with Mr. Damon. What motivated you to submit your name as a candidate for school board this year?
That actually occurred, it kind of, I have had political tendencies for a long time in my life, but recently, 5 months ago, I was involved in a motorcycle accident and was out of commission, 6 broken ribs, the whole works, bad things. But the result that from a child in my Sunday school class, he was just so broken up that I wasn't there to teach. And that kind of reflected that I make a difference in his life, and I'd like to make a difference in more students' lives like that. So I'm trying to use the skills that I have to bring, whatever benefit I can to the town of Hooksett and the school board, and, just be a benefit to this community.
Thank you.
My reason for putting my name on the ballot for school board was that attending the school board meetings, getting more involved, and I think even more than I was involved in the schools and what's happening there, I saw more and more that with every meeting I attended, there was a lot of chaos, there was a lot of accusation, there was a lot of indirect answers. There just wasn't an organization there, and it just came to me that they need some management skill in there to kind of bring them all back together, because they're very separated right now. We've all seen that, even with some of the things that have been in the news. So that is my mission, is to help them get there.
Mr. Sullivan.
I decided to seek re-election again, to continue with my service for the last 12 years, to continue what I've been doing, asking prudent questions, having a background in education. I think that, again, as I said, gives me a unique perspective. I certainly am committed to service to the town. I do a lot of other things, so it's certainly not something that I take lightly. But whatever I do for the school board or whatever committee I serve on, I give 100%, and I think my history working with all boards has resulted in a good and excellent school district.
Mr. Crowe.
I've always been interested in the school and in the school board. I've had the advantage of attending many school board meetings that were conducted by people in this room. And I had intended to pursue the school board. I was slightly interrupted by that for a couple of years when I was working on another project here in town that fortunately has come to a resolve at this time. So when the high school issue came up this year, I said to myself, I am knowledgeable about the school board, how it runs. I'm knowledgeable about these issues. This is the time for me to step forward and to put my name on the ballot. And that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Mr. Trubisky.
Yes, mainly I put my name on the budget this year because of the way that this board has adopted certain policies, especially pertaining to the high school situation with parents and not being allowed to send students to a school not of record, as they have in the past. And basically, because I see that the school board is not following the contract that we do have, and I think that in the long run, they could cost the city of Hooksett, the town of Hooksett, much more money in the way that they're dealing with matters right now. So that's basically why I did it right now. And my son is in 8th grade now through the school system in Hooksett.
Thank you. Next question is a 2-minute question, and we'll start with Ms. Reed. Recently, the school board made a policy decision to allow Hooksett students to attend high school in other communities only if educational hardship is demonstrated. The specific language of the high school contract with Manchester calls for review on a, quote, case-by-case basis, end quote. Do you support the new policy decision that calls for demonstration of educational hardship, and why or why not? Ms. Reed?
I do not support the new policy, and the reason I would not support the new policy is I don't think that there was enough research and proper wording and a proper policy put in place. Over the last year, the school board meetings that I've attended, we've asked numerous times. I've heard a lot of folks that are here in the audience today ask a definition of what they're considering hardship and what they believe that would be. And we have never gotten a clear definition on what that would be. And that's where you've heard me say tonight that I see a lot of disconnection and disorganization in the group. One of my big concerns would be that we all come together and we really examine the contract with Manchester, we examine our students and where they're at, and we really write a very formal written policy. There are other schools throughout the state of New Hampshire that send their children to other high school districts right now today. And they have some wonderful written policies completely outlining in detail how it works and how that child can be taken out of a district. And I think we need to step forward and come together with a reasonable policy, something in writing with a lot more detail that explains exactly what an exception would be. And that's one of my goals that I would work toward, one of the very first things that I think needs to be addressed.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan.
The reason for the change in policy was to clarify what that definition meant. The contract has a paragraph which refers to that, and part of that section states that the high school contract states that the sending district agrees to send all of their public high school students to Manchester high schools, with the exception of those students who petition a sending district, which would be Hooksett, to attend a different high school and are approved for such attendance on a case-by-case basis. That's it. Under the definition of case-by-case in the dictionary, case-by-case is separate and distinct from others of the same kind. Beyond that, there's no guidance on what that should be. What we needed to do and to come up with, to explain what the reasons were that would meet that case-by-case. Under other contracts that I've read, and I quoted one from the Hudson District, it also mentions hardship as reasons, and it said specifically unique circumstances, and I should have brought that with us. So beyond that, it states that each request needs to be reviewed case by case to meet that guideline. If, for whatever reason, we decide to remove that hardship decision, that same guideline and why we approve and why we not approve requests would remain the same, distinct and separate. I have voted no on some, and I recently voted yes because that met my criteria, that by going outside of Manchester, your student or your child would be affected emotionally, physically, educationally, and so forth. So that is not a school choice contract, case by case, and we're allowed to do that. There actually is the two choices, Manchester Central or Manchester West.
Thank you. Mr. Pearl.
I oppose the policy change. For 10 years, the school board has been reviewing and approving children to go outside of the district on a case-by-case basis. 2 years ago, I filed for my daughter to go to Pembroke. It was considered separately. There was 3 criteria. I had to pay any tuition difference, I had to provide transportation, and she had to be accepted by Pembroke High School. All 3 of those things happened, and her attendance there was approved. For this school board to go back and criticize past boards and say things like they weren't doing their job, they were rubber stamping, they weren't doing case by case, is absolutely incorrect. And I take it as an insult to the people that served on the school board prior. Because those people did give consideration to those cases, and they did have criteria. Nowhere in this contract does it mention hardship. It does say case by case. And I will use a quick analogy. If you're picking apples from a tree and you're supposed to do it one at a time, that is your method, case by case. Which apples you pick, which ones you keep, are the standards that you set. The method does not change. It has to be one by one. But the standard can change. They have changed the standard to hardship. I disagree with that. It should be changed back to the prior requirements. Thank you.
Mr. Dubus.
Yeah, the policy is ludicrous, actually. You know, Central, West, and Memorial are great schools, excellent schools for a vast majority of Hooksett students. But we've always had in that contract that option to send students to a school not of record, to not Manchester, and for good reason. The parents know what's best for their child. Parents know what's best, and it's that simple. To put a hardship in there, the contract doesn't say anything about hardship. And it says you just have to deal with them individually, one at a time, case by case. Hudson may have the word hardship in theirs, or other schools, but ours doesn't. And it's been working for years. And it's a small percentage of students that request this. So,
Thank you. Mr. Damon.
The policy that I understand is set up such that each case is approved, indicating a decision needs to be made. It's clearly not a rubber stamp situation, but there are some considerations that need to be made. And I am not convinced that the terms of making an approval are well defined. I'd like to see clarity on that, one from possibly a lawyer that can determine, what is the case law concerning our agreement and how it has occurred throughout the state. If we can support having students go out to different schools, I think that's certainly a viable option. But I also have to think about what I've discovered with RSA 189, which points out that the town is responsible for the education, not such that you can have a split bill, part of which is paid by the school board or the school, and part paid by the parent. I didn't find that verbiage anywhere. So that concerns me, that having students go to other districts would cause unfair spending ratios for some students and not others. So there needs to be certainly a more definitive definition of what that